to the February 2023 meeting of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I will call this meeting to order. I can't 100% see who is in chambers, but I'm told we have quorum, which is fantastic. And I'd love to start by just doing a little go round of introducing ourselves and checking in, both just to check in and have a little practice of doing the check-in with us as our human selves before we get into us as our, like, wearing all our many work hats we bring to the space, and also because we don't necessarily all know each other. I know we've got one new member today. So I can begin. If everyone can just say name, pronouns if you want, where you work if you want, and some little thing about how you're doing right now. It can be as invulnerable as you want. Yeah, I am Veronica Pillar, they, them, or she, her pronouns. I am county legislator for District 2, and I am here from sunny California, where I just arrived an hour ago, so a little confused about the timing, but grateful for the weather. And since like half of us are on Zoom, not necessarily in the order, if you could maybe say who you're passing the ball to next. So I am going to pass it to Lisa next.
Thanks, Veronica. I'm Lisa Holmes. I'm a county administrator, work in county administration, pronouns she, her, and been on WDIC a long time. And my check-in, I think my body and my mind are trying to catch up with where I'm at just from all of the back-to-back meetings. So it'll take me a couple minutes, but I'm sure I'll settle in here. And let's see, I'll pass the baton on to Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Graham. I am an employee at the Tompkins County Clerk's Office, pronouns she, her. I'm also a member of JEDI, and I'm doing pretty good today. I'm going to pass it over to Nick.
Great. So my name is Nick Bennett. My pronouns are he, him. I am the communications specialist for Workforce Office of Employment and Training. I'm also a professor in a past life. And I'm the chair of the Access and Equity Committee, subcommittee of JEDI. I'm kind of going with this. I guess my how I'm doing. My department is finishing the last of our big grants in this current cycle, and so feeling really great about going to the office tomorrow and not having to work on that. Oh, and I would pass it to, I'd like to pass it to Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Clark. I'm the director of the County Office of Human Rights. I'm he, him. And I have been sort of in, well, standing still, but staying busy like the entire day. It's just been almost nonstop, similar to other experiences here. And so I don't know which is worse, that or trying to figure out whether it's 12:33 instead of 3:33 as Veronica may be doing. but nonetheless, a good day and a productive. I will pass this on to Dr. McBean Claiborne.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. I'm Leslie McBean Claiborne, and I am the director of the Greater Ithaca Activity Center, known as GIAC, former legislator. And yeah, it's one of those days. And I don't know who else is in the room. I see Kit. Kit, are you on? I'll pass it to Kit.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you. Yes, I am here, and I don't always get to attend these meetings anymore. Dina and I share the responsibility for attending, but she's away this week, so they're stuck with me. So I'm Kit Kephart. I'm the commissioner at the Department of Social Services. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm glad to be here. I will be honest, I have a couple of phone calls, so I'm going to be popping in and out, but I will be with you most of the time. And it's been a really busy day, so there's a lot going on, but that's probably the way it is for all of us. So I'm glad to be here with everybody.
We've got Annie and Ruby here
Oh,
too.
sorry, I'm supposed to pass it on. Sorry about that, I forgot. So yeah, let's maybe we'll pass it on to Ann Corman.
Thank you, Kit. I'm Annie Corman, County Legislator. My district is number 5, Trumansburg, Ulysses, town of Enfield. And I was going to say I'm a former social justice environmental activist, but I bring that into my work as a legislator for sure. And my preferred pronouns are she and her. And today I'm actually feeling more grounded than I have the last couple of weeks. And it's because I was at an event just now and I got to talk to employees. And anytime I get to talk to employees or people in the public and really hear of what their needs are, it makes me remember why I'm doing this and helps me figure out some next steps and different things. And I will pass it on to Ruby back in the corner here.
Hi, Ruby Pulliam, Commissioner of Human Resources, she, her, my pronouns. And today I am flowing. Just from one thing to the other, but it's okay. And I'm flowing within my boundaries. So I'm pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about that. And
It's like
Kate,
just got here.
Kate. Hi, Kate. I'm passing the baton to you.
We're just doing introductions.
Oh, hi, everyone. Sorry
Yeah.
I'm late. Kate Shanks Booth, Director of Tompkins County Youth Services.
Awesome, thank you. If you want, we're also sharing pronouns and a check-in of like how you're doing right now. Does not have to be super personal.
Yeah, no, she and her, and burning both ends of the can. Keeping it interesting.
Sounds like a common one. Awesome, thank you. And Taylor, no pressure. Do you want to introduce yourself? I know you're scribing rather than being a member of the meeting, but you're very prominent on my camera.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Taylor Spencer, and I'm a deputy clerk for the legislature.
How are you doing today?
I'm well today, thank you.
Good.
Awesome. And she keeps this show running, so we're very grateful for that. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Looks like none. Let's go to the minutes approval. Can I have someone move the minutes from January 25? I see Kate moves. Annie seconds. Fantastic. Discussion on the minutes?
Veronica? Yeah, I just
Yes.
wanted to mention that, let's see. I forgot your name. Nick, sorry. Nick has been sworn in, so Nick is an official member and can vote.
Okay, awesome, good, yes, thank you. I knew that was intended to happen. Thank you for confirming. Great. Anything about the minutes? Seeing none, let us vote. Taylor, do we do a roll call for this?
You could, because there are members virtual.
Okay, let us do a roll call then. Annie,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Leslyn,
Yes.
Kit,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That's unanimous. Thank you. So now on to the bulk of our agenda. As you can see, a bunch of discussion items. First one, very short, the Women's History Month proclamation. Women's History Month is coming up in March, and I think Annie said you were working on a proclamation. So I didn't want to dive into it here, but I wanted to bring it up in case anybody, if you wanted to give an update, and if anyone here is excited on working on that, and or not excited on working on it, but has a point in mind that you want to make sure gets in there. Annie, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to share what you were thinking?
Sure. This was following up on a suggestion from someone in the community, actually. And so I'm writing up a proclamation for Women's History Month, which is March, declaring it Carol Kamen, I think is how you pronounce her last name, Carol Kamen Women's History Month. And Carol is retiring after 32 years as our county historian. And this year's theme is women, or is I think women who have helped tell our stories. So that's why it really made the alignment is actually pretty perfect, that she's retiring and that this is the theme for this year, and it's coming up right now. And also at 4:30, so this is going to be proclaimed on March 7th. If anybody wants to come or virtually Zoom in, and if there's anything you want to say in honor of Carol, you can also you can come and speak at privilege of the floor. If anybody wants to see the proclamation, let me know if you want to see, if you want to add to it. And it's just about done. And some people have been helping me with that. And at 4:30, so this is the legislature meeting. March 7th is when we'll be, Shauna Black, the chair of the legislature, will be reading this proclamation at the beginning of the meeting. But before that, at 4:30, we're having a reception for Carol to honor her in her retirement here at the legislative chambers. So if anybody wants to come to that, to honor her, you can come to that.
Awesome, thank you. I was going to ask if Carol would be there herself to receive the proclamation, so it sounds like yes.
Yes, she will be there.
Any comments or questions on this from anybody?
Just thank you
Annie.
for working on it, and I'd love you to send it to me.
To look at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to review it or?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you, Annie, for doing that. I'm looking forward to being there to honor Carol. She really is being amazing in this community, and I work very closely with her. So it's nice to hear that there'll be a proclamation in her honor.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I just want to say
Annie?
one more thing. I'll make sure an invitation gets sent to this group, and Taylor will help me with that. But to WDIC, I'll send the invitation for both of those things.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. All right, moving on, we have a discussion on the 2023 Workplace Climate Survey plans. And I think this is probably either Lisa's or Ruby's to lead us off. Who wants to take? Lisa.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Our last workplace climate survey was done in 2018. At that time, we had planned that we were going to be doing it at least every 5 years to allow for time in between to follow up on the findings and results and so forth, which I think we've done a really good job since the 2018 survey. And then in mid-year 2022, we realized a grant opportunity to assist the county in an overall strategic operations plan, in which we intended to start off and to center equity at the core of that plan, And at that time, we had discussed putting off the climate survey to focus on the strategic operations plan and employee engagement in that plan. So I think that's where we landed. So for 2023, we don't have the plan to go ahead with the workplace climate survey, nor do we really have the capacity to do both. So we'd be looking at, probably 2024 at the earliest.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And I know this also comes up on our things about the survey on our possible 2023 goals, but does anyone have questions or things to add right now?
I have a question.
Yes, Rachel.
Because I know when we decided to, I think we decided at a WDIC meeting to put it off 1 year at one point. So do we need to is there something WDIC needs to do to push it off further? And okay. And then my second part to the question is, should we, or should someone communicate to employees that it's being pushed off and for what reason?
I think that's a good point. And we may be able to do that simultaneous to communicating with employees about the strategic planning process itself. We received the good news yesterday that we received the grant, and that was almost a sure thing, but it's been delayed by 6 months, the notification of grant award. So we will be going through the process of that grant acceptance, bringing that through committee soon. And so I think that the announcement can go out to employees. We can be sure to make it known in the context of putting that word out. And I'll make a note to that effect. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Rachel. Other questions, comments? I have a question. Looking forward to when we perhaps can do a next climate survey, what's the likelihood that we can do this in 2024, and how does this intersect? I know we've been waiting for the hiring of a chief equity and diversity officer, and with the strategic plan, that person will also have a lot on their plate with that as well. I guess, can you comment on what we could maybe expect next year?
Well, what we had done in the past, and we don't have to be wedded to it, but it's also a path that has been created since the last climate survey. And Leslyn, I know you were a part of that, and I've been a part of the past several climate surveys as well, that we have engaged with a contractor, a third party who, for the last 2 climate surveys, we utilized the same, or maybe 90% of the same questions, so that we could look at trends. And that in and of itself is a very useful thing. It's also been useful to have the third party compile the data, so that employees don't feel as though someone in administration, for instance, or someone in HR, it has the background information on their survey responses. So that's been important for some individuals in completing the survey. Whether or not we continue to engage with that contractor would be something for us to consider. I think there is value to utilizing a lot of the same questions, but we may want to look at freshening or adding some questions that we may have missed in the past. But I think it's useful to look at trends over time and how things compared since the last time we completed the survey. So those are the things off the top of my head to consider.
Awesome, thank you. That's helpful, Lisa. I know I hadn't thought of the value of having the third-party contractor in terms of like alleviating fears of who's going to be reading my responses. So that that's helpful to think about.
There may be some value too to have some discussion. And Leslyn, you were more involved in the work with that contractor as to whether we were satisfied with their work product and whether we would want to continue with them. But we can discuss that further.
Yeah, that sounds good. This may be silly of me, but are the results of the previous climate surveys, like whatever the contractor gave back, available anywhere now?
We have records of them in county admin. I'm not sure if they're publicly posted. I don't believe that we publicly posted them, but we have, we have overall results across the county. We also have, I believe Amy Hendricks created a document which was also a follow-up from what we did as a result of the survey results, the things that were implemented due to the findings. So I think that's pretty useful as well. It included the creation of the Chief Equity Diversity Officer position, Team Jedi, among other follow-up items. So I can try to find that document and share it for the committee.
Yeah.
I have that
actually, yeah. Sorry.
I have that document and I would share it with Lisa.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was going to say, Ruby, you said that's the document you bumped up to me just earlier today. So
Right.
I can also share that out with the committee or like ask Taylor too. I'll email you. I guess I might also be interested in seeing the original survey, like just like the blank survey, like what were the questions, not even anyone's responses.
I think we have that as well.
Okay, that would be cool as just in preparation for thinking of it more in the future. Speaking of which, any other questions, comments before we move on to talk about committee goals and perhaps come back to this? Cool, let's keep rolling. So next two discussion items are the review of the 2022 WDIC goals and discussion on 2023 WDIC goals. And I'm wondering if you think it would work okay to kind of go through both at once, because I think you can see, what are these, packet page 6 and 8, they're structured in a similar way, and some of the 2022 goals have just hopped onto the 2023 goals. So are people okay kind of looking at both things at once? Awesome. So in this first category, and I mean the categories are a bit fluid, but this category of membership, our 2022 goal was just possible additions. It said we currently at the time had 3 vacant seats. And we just added Nick, which is wonderful. I can't remember who joined when, but I think Dr. Jen was added since then at least. And I know the upshot is we now have 12 members, which is great. And we also, we haven't approved the bylaws yet, but if we do, we will be fixing the total number of members, in some minutes from now at 13 instead of a range, which would leave us with 1 vacancy currently. So I think we're doing great on that. And then looking over at 2023, we put on our, and these are like proposed committee goals that I think like I finished the document, Rachel started it, we talked about it, but this is very, very up for editing. That's like the point of the discussion now. So what we have as proposed goals are review and update bylaws. Would love to keep that goal because we are totally definitely going to succeed. And recruit new members to fill vacancies and expand representation, which would include ideally at least one more person for the vacancy. Any thoughts, comments on these membership goals, both past and future?
Looks good to me.
All right, great. That was the easy one. In the workforce category, we had on 2022, first one was human resources, continue to support their work and understand the processes in place. And this is kind of an ongoing thing. So we've just copied it straight to 2023. Wondering if anyone has thoughts on how we've been doing, what we should be doing. Ruby, you don't have to have thoughts, but if you do, it would be appropriate for you to speak first if you'd like. Sort of like a, how can this committee help you?
Honestly, I was trying to figure out what that meant. It's so far since I've been here, the extent of the interaction has been trying to figure out how to figure out the data, the demographics of the county employees, which there have been some difficulties with our systems, our various systems. We have so many systems and the numbers are different in each. We now have added complication of N4 is gone, which was the previous system that we had finally gotten used to the report in a certain way. And now we have UKG, and we are working with ITS to try to pull the data out. Reporting data is just one of those, I don't understand why we don't have the numbers that we need and why we can't extract them easily. But ITS is working on a program for us, so I can report back after we figure that out. And then I guess the role of the committee would be, how do we disseminate that information? And how do we establish goals, if that's our purpose, to be more representative in our departments? But first, we have to get reliable data.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So I'm hearing that the data piece is something that this committee could possibly help with in like doing use. Here, go ahead. Oh, also, Kate says in the chat it's hard to hear, Ruby. I can actually hear you fine, but I don't know if there's a.
You can move that,
Yeah.
or you can reach, because we have.
Disseminating the data and putting it in proper context, I think, is what the committee would be useful in. But as I said, the difficulty or the hindrance is first getting the reliable data. And at this point, I think that's something only ITS can help us with because of the unique systems that we have.
That makes sense. I wonder if one thing this committee, like that we could put some effort to, is just learning more about the data that you do have or the limitations on it. Because I think that we have ideas on, here's what we'd love to know about our workforce. And I think this came up when you shared the demographic data, and you have, whether it's what you want to have or not, you have the information of like, no, we don't know that, or, oh, we know, like, we collect this information because this is how it's in the software and the government like regulations of blah, blah, blah.
Right, and for the most part, we collect the data that our EEO reports require. So if there's, I know Annie has asked several times about some data that we don't presently collect, and I'm not sure how we can collect it, but that's something.
Like LGBTQ
Right.
status, you just don't
Right.
ask
We don't,
that question.
right,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. Is it helpful to get those kinds of questions about data we'd like to see, even if you don't have a way to make that happen in the near term?
My concern is the legal ramifications. So that's my biggest concern. Because it's difficult to get data that's not, I want to say, pre-approved by the federal government. I don't want to open the county up to some legal liability. So I don't know if the climate, and within the climate survey, we can ask specific questions that are not necessarily required for reporting, but that's something we can investigate.
And we have, I think, there are questions about that on the survey, so.
Yeah.
Can you say that louder?
Oh, yes, and I was saying that there were questions like that on the last workplace climate survey. It was optional to answer, but people could answer if they wanted to.
Yeah, so that's one way to help us get some of that information that we can.
Right.
We can't require it, but that's one way to ask.
And one question that's always been asked is, to what end? We want data, we want to collect data, but to what end? What's the purpose? And I think we have to be prepared to voice that so that people understand why we're asking for that information.
Ruby, can you say a little bit more about what you mean by not opening the county up to legal ramifications? What would do that?
Okay, in some cases in EEO, if it's documented that your race is documented or your gender is documented and you don't receive a promotion that you applied for, and it's known information, then there could be a suit that's saying you didn't get the information based upon your race or your gender. There could be an employee could claim that any adverse employment decision is based upon that data. So we're very careful in how we ask and who is aware of that information. That's why when it's optional for our demographic sheet, it's optional, but there is also some sheets that would you prefer this information not be shared to, if it's a search committee? When we're in searches, we very seldom share that information, especially prior to decisions being made, because we have to be able to justify that the decisions were made based on job responsibilities only and not on a protected category.
I guess I'm still fuzzy. So there are categories of data that you have to collect for federal government reporting.
Correct.
And some of that data is the same data that we can see as a committee. Or are you saying you're not able to share that information and that's what could potentially open the county up to?
Right. It could potentially open.
Or are you saying, it sounds like that, if I'm getting it correct, Ruby, you're saying if we ask additional questions in addition to what's legally required?
Even some of the questions that we currently ask is optional. We only share in a certain way. We don't share names. And it's interesting when you're doing departments. Okay, if you have a department where there's only one minority, it's easy for people to figure out who that is. And if that person, for instance, was denied a promotion or was denied any kind of employment action, then that person could say it's based upon them knowing. So it's really difficult to balance the information that we share, but because it's required or is requested in a federal report, we can share it in certain formats. But we really have to strip a lot of the identifying information from it.
I wonder if that could be addressed in the grievance process. If some of it could be remedied in a protection sense.
It's difficult to prove that a decision, unless it's properly documented, it's difficult to prove that an employment decision was not made based upon a protected category. The first question that's on the EEO complaint form is, are you a member of any of these categories? If yes, then automatically your complaint is accepted. And then the county has to go through the process of defending the decisions that were made. So it's not that certain information cannot be released, it's how we release it and what information we actually give to the public. And in this case, we just have to be very careful that any employment decisions can be documented and basically defended based upon that job and not on a personal identifying characteristic.
So what we asked for in this committee is not personal identifying information, but general demographics.
Correct.
And that is presentable, like we could get that information.
Correct. And we finally had a format that that information was provided for, but that was in the previous system.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful for me to understand a little better too. One thing this reminds me of is I think at our last meeting, if I remember correctly, when you were talking about that article about like the diversity inclusion industrial complex kind of, I think both Kit and Kate had, but correct me if I'm wrong, brought up that your departments end up having a lot of data and that like could be used to share information about people or to tell a story, and that's something, but that's something that you'd like to do more of or wanted support with. And I guess my first question is, am I remembering this right? And then that sounds like, you know, maybe different kinds of data, and this might be not about like employees, but it sounds similar in a flavor of, could this committee help figure out how to like do some useful communication with data that we already have that's not in a like direct shareable format?
Yes, Veronica, you are remembering. Sorry, it took me a second to remember. I was like, what did I say? Yeah, no. So I think, you know, in talking with county administration this year and looking at our goals for 2023, one of the things that we're really trying to do is we do collect a lot of data. We do town profiles. We do a lot of information from our funded agencies. We're looking at expanding some of that into our municipal youth service system. And we do have a lot of data that tells us a lot of things, right? But is it really telling us the stories that we need? Is it really getting at the heart of some of the stuff when we look at equity, inclusion, and how we target the county funds, when how we set goals and objectives with our funded agencies, when we start having conversations with our youth commissions, and having them create DEI statements, which we did last year, and help them target in on certain populations. And so that is something that we are trying to get better at. But if there was a resource, best practices, somebody that we could talk to that would help us facilitate that process and make sure that we were on the right track. You know, we are going to be using, it's called, I think it's Tableau. It's the software package that the Whole Health is using to do their community, the chips in the chaw and those sort of things. And so it looks like we're going to be using that software as well to make sure there's consistency across how we're telling our data. But it is a conversation that is a great interest to me and something that I'd like us to do. I think it's important for a number of reasons, you know, besides from our department, but I don't know if Kit has anything to add, but.
Yeah. Kit, are you here? I know Kit said that she had a couple phone calls to take during this time, so might be stepping out. So we may be in one of those moments. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kate. So would it make sense for a committee goal, I don't know how to word this, to be to find or consider trying to like find some of these best practices, or maybe find I don't know if this would work, but my thought is like there's got to be people at Cornell who like research and work on and teach this kind of stuff, who might be able to help us figure out how to or think about how to use data we have to like get this information and tell these stories that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And while like, being sensitive to not to treating people's personal information appropriately. Annie?
Yeah, I was thinking back to last meeting when you had sent around, Veronica, that I think it was you that sent around that article.
Yeah, it was Jennifer actually, but yeah.
Jennifer. But about like, I think it was something about like, are we looking at this the right way? And so I'm just wondering if that's something we want to kind of defer for now, because we keep talking about the numbers. We've been talking about it for several years, because first off, we don't even have the numbers. Once we get the numbers, maybe that could be something we look at it then. Like if it's not giving us what we need, do we want the next climate survey? Do we want to ask more questions then and use that kind of data? I don't know. Or do we want to do something that, once we get our chief equity and diversity officer in here, do we want to look at how we're going to, go about this? Is it workplace culture? Is it trainings? Is it other things that they're going to help anyway? And possibly, for instance, that the diversity officer might be able to then drill down. I don't know. I'm just putting this out there. Could they drill down and look at, something that maybe we don't need all these numbers for, that you just, for instance, walk into a department and go, oh, we could maybe help, this is a certain department that could use some help and they don't know how to go about it, to get more, increase their diversity or their culture, whatever it is. But it could be something that's going to be department specific. I just came from a meeting a couple hours ago with the building trades, and what's going to work for them. It's a whole different set of things that have been brought together that are going to, I think, help, with the diversity of the trades. But it's what's going to work for that, and what's going to work, for instance, at the county with various departments could be all different things. So I just wanted to throw that out there and muddy the waters. Or hopefully not muddy the waters, but just for thought.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Thank you. So maybe this is something that maybe how do we use the data is something we could keep in mind and come back to it later in the year. And then we might still push it off, but in the meantime, think in terms of that article, what specific issues do we notice, or what specific questions you have, and it won't necessarily be the same for this particular department versus the county employees as a whole versus not just the employees of the county. And we can kind of keep this in the back of our minds of hey, there may be data that could help us address this, or hey, maybe we could collect data that'll help us address this. But not go rushing right now to find someone to help us use what we have if we don't know what for. Does that fit with what you were saying?
Yes, I'm just wondering, what you or other people thought about that. That's just been something that we have been focused in the past. Hey, get us these numbers, where are these numbers? And if I could just I'm knocking myself, that, we should have these numbers. Well, maybe that's not the droid we're looking for. Maybe that can only tell us so much. And we've already said there's limitations to the questions that are asked. Is there something else we should be looking for? And maybe that's kind of like regrouping as we go along this year of where do we want to focus on? How do we want to approach this and make things better? I don't know.
I think context and purpose are two words that, for data, in what context will you use it? And for what purpose are you gathering it? Not just the ability to have the numbers, but what's the purpose beyond that? What story do you want to tell? What trends are you looking at? So purpose is important.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about another process I just thought about, and we definitely need the assistance of anyone who could, is in recruitment and retention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are some employees who feel like their voices are not being heard.
Right.
So being able to listen, being able to, magnify those voices, being able to help us recruit diverse candidates. This is a place to be for, if you want to work in a diverse environment. So we can always use the assistance of the committee in helping us to recruit. So being at some of the job fairs, just word of mouth.
So maybe that could be a goal, a suggested goal. Not sure how you want to word it, but something about assisting.
That fits right under what you have. Continue to support their work and understand the processes, and those processes are recruitment and use of demographic data.
And recruitment and retention.
I think that sounds great. Thanks, Ruby.
And that's been said in, a couple of departments. It's like we get people in, but we can't keep them. For whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's really important, probably worth a bigger conversation work push at another WDIC meeting for sure. Yeah, maybe the next one.
Right, like today you went around and we introduced ourselves, and hopefully that's going to help Nick feel more welcomed, and versus we don't acknowledge somebody is new at the table. I mean, that's a small thing, but it's an important thing. And are we doing those things that help somebody feel a part? And are we giving them, like you said, somebody said their voice, are their voices heard? And are we giving them what they need to be successful in the county?
Yeah. All right. Anything else here before we move on to the next goal? I'm looking at the 2023 one to try to keep going down, both of them synced up. The next 2023 one stuck in here is review results of the compensation study and support the county's response. That was not on 2022 because we hadn't gotten that yet. And I think the current status, Ruby, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we had received preliminary results and sent them back for more,
Right.
And they will be coming back to us at some point during this year.
And then we'll take it through the legislative processes, beginning with BCP. But there were some issues with the initial report in that on our salary scales, the job titles are listed, but it doesn't say whether they're full-time or part-time. So in some instances, the peer or the comparable titles were full-time titles, whereas ours are part-time. There's some other things, so you can't really get a compensation average if you're not measuring apples to apples. So, and there were some titles that were no longer in existence, or that we felt like after we read the job description that were not comparable. So those things we've asked them to go back and just delete and, you know, just come up with something that's more comparable to what we have.
That makes sense. Thank you. So I think it makes sense to have this as a goal for this year that we will take up when the study results are, you know, back and accepted by the legislature. Great. Next one, this is identical. Oh,
Veronica,
yes.
before you move on, I just had to, I just wanted to ask Ruby an additional question on the compensation study. Maybe I missed it. Ruby, did you say what were some of the other factors they needed to consider? Did I just miss that?
What do you mean? I just said basically the primary issue was with the titles, they were comparing some of our part-time titles to full-time titles, and which skewed the results. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that we talked about. Then there were some titles that may be comparable to the market rate, but we were having difficulty recruiting. So we had them add Town of Ithaca for instance, or some of the areas that we lost employees to. So we have them gathering that data to include along with the market rate data.
And what's the deadline for them to come back with information to us?
They should be back. We expect to have something to BCP for the BCP March meeting.
Okay.
So we've been playing scenarios with what we have, but we're waiting for that final data.
And do you know if this company is also taking into consideration cost of living in Tompkins County when they do that market rate study?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Leslyn. Thank you, Ruby. Next one, this is on both 2022 and 2023. Okay, it's not verbatim the same, but basically the same. Continue to offer support and funding for the various diversity and inclusion awards as identified by or in conjunction with Team Jedi's Recognition and Appreciation Committee. I could actually use some education around this. Does anyone maybe from Team Jedi want to comment on it?
Well, I know it was something that had been in the works with WDIC for some time, but no, it just didn't happen. And then once Jedi was formed, the Recognition and Appreciation Committee helped with some ideas around that. And then we gave the first award to Leslyn when she left the ledge. And that was the one and only award that we've given. So then we went, because I think that was in 2022. And so in 2023, that it didn't happen. So it would be nice if we could do that again this year.
Okay, that sounds like a good goal. The version of the 2022 goals had stuff about funding for the awards. Does that, what is that for? Do they cost money? Or is that, are talking about say the purchasing of a physical plaque or what? I don't remember what you got, Leslyn, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a quilt, I think, right? It was a quilt and an actual plaque or award. And both of those things cost money.
Right.
So I did get a lovely quilt, but there was no plaque or award.
There wasn't?
For that. All I know is that there was that the award was named in my honor, but there wasn't a tangible something that came except for the very beautiful quilt. And so that is something we need to talk about over. I mean, we've talked about a monetary award, but it would be specifically for continuing education or whatever in diversity, equity, inclusion. We've talked about an award of paying for someone to attend a faraway conference or something like that, but that already happens when people ask. And then having, like we have for the poet laureate, a running board that's mounted somewhere in the legislature, someplace prominent. We talked about the Tompkins County Public Library, for example, where the person's name will go.
That would be nice to have one.
So, but yes, no. If there's a plaque hidden somewhere, I'd like to get it.
Yeah, we're gonna find it, because I know Ruby and I
Just
are,
like
we're
I-
like, we know there was one, we
Just
remember
like I'd like to
somebody.
get my 5-year
Someone take it to
award, my
Texas.
10-year award, and my 15 and 20-year award from HR. I still haven't gotten them, so I'm just saying.
Okay, I know nothing about it. I knew, I said I knew. If you send me an email to tell me what you're missing, I will research and find it.
And this is
We
why,
will make it right.
and this is why Ruby sits in the back of the room.
Visitor.
All right, so I think this is a very good goal to have on here, is first find like 5 plaques for Leslin, and then consider
Well, let's watch it.
and see if we can make this, a plaque for the future recipients of the Leslin McQueen Claiborne Award. I don't remember what the rest of the name was. Yeah, I listened to this legislature meeting while driving, and I just remember it's a bummer that clapping in chambers does not really carry through virtually. So I was like, why did everyone stop talking? Oh, they're clapping. Anyhow, and yes, like picking this back up so that we can award it to more people, because I know that that Leslin's done amazing work and is not the only person to be doing this stuff. Next one. Things are out of order, but the next one on the 2023, and then I'll come back to the 2022 list, was host the Tompkins County Workforce Reading and Discussion Program in collaboration with the City of Ithaca. And that was on a 2022 goal as well, but I think that, I think the program ran once last spring, right?
Yes. And that was a collaboration at one point, the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer and the Office of Human Rights. So I'm not sure if Dr. Clark, if that's a part of your work plan for, I don't know, or if that's still going to be under the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer once hired.
Well, based on what Deanna and I had worked out, she agreed to take on the reading project, and I agreed to take on the planning for Juneteenth. And so,
Okay.
So I'd be happy to allow the new CEDO to do this.
We'll need to fill that position.
Or have the city.
Or the city, right?
Or have the city,
City or the
So you
city.
didn't-
Yeah, so was there someone at the city who also like co-ran it last time?
Shelley.
Michelle.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it seems like, I mean, I didn't participate last time, but it sounded like it was a good program, a good thing. So it would be great to do again. But it seems like we don't currently have staff whose job it would be to do that.
Correct.
What if we keep the goal, but maybe downgraded a little to figure out who can host the workforce reading and discussion program.
That makes sense.
All right, so we will attend to that and hope it can happen, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. Going.
Well, sorry. I wonder, I mean, if it's nobody's job or everybody's job, it doesn't get done. And so I wonder if it is something we can ask of our administration to put out a department heads meeting, just to ask, is there a department that wants to take on the reading and discussion program for this year? And instead of twice a year, we're doing it just once a year. Maybe there's someone, but at least we'll have an action step and we'll know if somebody is available to do it or not. I'm sorry to hear that you wouldn't be doing it, Reverend Clark, because I thought it fit really well with the work of the Office of Human Rights. And over the years, different employees have sort of taken it on and led, which is what we wanted. Not just a single person, but there should be a leader somewhere. So I just wonder if that's something that can be asked amongst the workforce.
I'd be willing to do that. We're on the precipice of another, interviews for Chief Equity Diversity Officer. So I was envisioning that it would remain in that person's work program for the year, because that's where it had landed the last time. But if that does not materialize, I'd be glad to put it out to the department heads.
Lisa, might I ask, what is the anticipated date of potentially hiring someone for the CEDO if that happens?
Well, we're going to be starting the interviews tomorrow. So, no, sorry, Friday. So we're close, hopefully.
Okay. All right. So it's potentially something that could happen in the fall.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you.
The only reason that I didn't offer myself for this year is that I am awash in planning programming right now between our office, Juneteenth, and also too several programs that we're planning with the New York State Division of Human Rights on fair housing and hate and bias prevention.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Leslyn. Dr. Clark, I'm excited about, not this moment, but to hear more about these programs or see them when they come. Now might be a good moment to skip ahead slightly to one of our proposed 2023 goals, was to support the hiring and onboarding of a new Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. Leslyn and Lisa, you are achieving this goal right now by having that little dialogue. And I think, well, it's exciting to hear interviews are happening. I think we can just it sounds like you're set, but if anything, I think this committee could be called upon to help with the hiring. And certainly, when Deanna was here, we worked, like WDIC worked closely with her. So we'll take up the welcoming and supporting and learning from and introducing to for the new person when we get them.
Thank you. And Ruby and Dr. Clark are involved in the interview panel, and myself.
Awesome. Thank you. The last thing on the 2023 workforce goals was monitor the implementation of recommendations stemming from the 2018 climate survey. And I guess we already touched on this, that document we talked about that we'll send out, that Amy and others wrote up is the current state of where things are. And I don't know if we should do a more concrete follow-up to that, or just be ready to look through it and see if there's specific things for the committee to follow up on, or be ready to support JEDI when asked, or just leave it on the goals like this with a reminder that we'll come back and check in again. Would love to hear brief thoughts.
I think maybe once those recommendations, once that document is circulated, if everyone could take a look at it and see what remains, if anything that we should be focusing on, that might be helpful.
Sounds great to me. Anyone else? All right. Let us hop back to the 2022 goals. The last one in the workforce section, and I apologize for making this jump around in the 2023 goals. I put it down in inclusion because lots of things could be in lots of places. But it said, continue to review Tompkins County's compliance with ADA in terms of employment and facilities, with an expectation that we are not just in compliance, but going above and beyond to make our facilities easily accessible to the public. Perhaps looking into having an evaluation by the Finger Lakes Independence Center. I don't think that we really did anything with this last year, did we?
I did reach out to the Finger Lakes Independence Center twice and never heard back from them.
Okay, so Rachel did do something with this, but yeah. Would we like to keep it as a goal for this year? Annie?
Yeah, I'd like to do something. I'm not sure what, but one of my thoughts around this too is looking at any major renovation or new building that the county should have. I'm wondering if this gets into maybe a policy where we don't necessarily, but still maybe we could use help from the Independence Center. I'm not sure where. Some agency or organization I'm sure has done this already, but if we could figure out some policy and then we could go back and try to implement it. You know, that we have a policy where, and I don't know what that would, I have no idea what that would say, but something that I'm sure there's something that says we're going to go a certain level for accessibility.
Well, my question then would be for facilities that don't pass that requirement, then where does the funding come from to remedy those issues, right? So, I mean, I can think of a handful of those buildings that in my mind, I feel wouldn't pass.
Right.
And so then what is the action step and how do we actually make that happen without, with it still being a priority in terms of funding?
Right, it's a good point where maybe we want to start with a policy for all new buildings because we are looking at, a new center of government, and it could take a while to get that policy in. And if we want to make a policy, I don't know what the policy, maybe it's amending a policy, I don't know, but to have that in, that's going to affect us going to get, engineers to make us plans for the development of that building, estimates, so that can, the design of that building. So if we had that in place, so actually I'm wondering if that is what we might choose as more important at this juncture, because if we don't have that in place, going to retrofit a new building kind of is ridiculous. To me, is ridiculous.
But don't they have to have for new builds? Don't they have to have those things in place in the planning of?
ADA accessibility, but for instance, there's things that can go beyond that to make a building more accessible. So for instance, these doors here that you can pull with one hand, that coming in here, that meets and you know, that meets the current guidelines, but is that what we want to have coming into buildings, or do we want to have all doors with that have a button that you can open, for instance? So there's another level. There's the minimum standards, and then there's going above that to make it much easier for accessibility.
Yeah, thank you, Annie and Nick. And I think that like building wise, I think I like the idea of like looking at making a policy and having it to start just apply to new buildings, or kind of looking at where, like figuring out what are the what would excellent accessibility look like, articulating that. And I mean, this is very not detailed, and then saying, okay, so anything new that the county does should meet these guidelines. Anything existing, yeah, I don't know, but don't just say, got to meet the guidelines now, got to retrofit all these buildings. And I'm also thinking of, it's not just buildings, but stuff like having, alt text on images on the internet, or like captions on video meetings. We don't do that. It might be helpful. These are things that I'd be interested in. If others think it could be useful, like looking into like, what value does that have, and how could we do it?
I have a disability resource coordinator in my office who she and I have been working together quite a bit to do that very thing with the accessibility of our materials, digital and print, and flyers and whatnot, and video as well. And so that's something I could maybe bring in some way with this work.
So it
That'd
also
be awesome.
seems like, thank you. Yes. So currently I would imagine that the county is in our builds or our retrofits following code, which requires a certain amount of accessibility per the ADA. And Annie, I think what you're speaking about are more universal design features that would be where possible over and above, or if they're thought of ahead of time, the cost of incorporation is marginal. Whereas
Right.
if you have to retrofit, it's more. So I don't know. I would be willing to have a conversation with Arel and Alan about that to understand the code and what they're currently following, and perhaps reference that in a policy along with, where possible, to incorporate universal design principles. I know the county is also using and contracting with a vendor for the accessibility of our website, and it's very useful information, and also challenging because our website management and the content management of the website is up to each individual department, and so that content changes daily. So we are in compliance and out of compliance and in and out pretty constantly. But that's also a really important thing to consider. I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I'd love, not right this moment, but I'd love to learn more about the accessibility work being done with the website. I also wanted to just acknowledge that, some meeting last year, Dominic came and presented on the language access work that they're doing with translating key materials, which isn't a disability thing per se, but it is an accessibility thing that I think is really, really good and really important, and kind of part of this goal that we're already on. Rachel?
I just have a question about the website issue that you were just mentioning, Lisa. Is it helpful if we make changes to our department websites to let Dom know when we do that?
There possibly, but there is the software that we use automatically scans all of the hundreds of thousands of pages of websites that the county uses like daily. And I think that information is available to departments, to each web developer, so that you can see if you've uploaded a material that is not friendly to a screen reader, et cetera, or you've uploaded some sort of image that that is problematic. I think my understanding is there are varying levels of skill in terms of the web developers across the county, and so some people read that material and are able to keep their websites very much accessible and up to date, and others not as much. And so we're trying to tighten that up across the county.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could also just add, so being a communications employee, the communications staff of Tompkins County, we have bi-weekly group session meetings, and this is actually, so the website accessibility is essentially the main focus of the next few meetings that we'll be having. So it is, I can let folks know that it is absolutely being worked on and improved.
Love that. Thank you. Any more on the accessibility topic? Annie?
A couple of years ago to WDIC, facilities did come probably more than once, and we did talk about improving the accessibility. And thank you for Lisa for saying what the universal design term. I couldn't remember that. So that's above just ADA accessibility. So we did have them come a couple times, and they have like data and they keep track of that. And so then they said that all the buildings are up to current ADA standards, but they don't do anything above. And it's a lot for them just to keep it to that standard. It's a lot of buildings. So they do keep them up to that, but just to let you know that.
Awesome. All right, we have 10 minutes left and about as many goals to talk to. So let's, I will try to speed it up. In the 2022 goals, in the diversity section, we had support and assist with the rollout of the newly adopted Tompkins County Values and Diversity Statement. And then linked to that, a proposed 2023 goal is just to continue to support the adoption and uptake of county values throughout the organization. There definitely was progress on that last year. I forget where we were at the beginning, but values are in performance reviews, like posters all over, and they've been out in the public as well. I forget what else. Who shared the diversity statement? Any comments on that or suggestions? Cool. Good job, us. Let's keep that as a goal for 2023. Next one on the 2022 one was support the Strategic Diversity Planning Committee in their work of developing Tompkins County's strategic diversity plan. 2023 version says follow information regarding Tompkins County's strategic plan to ensure that DEIJ are central and essential components in the plan. And I think we got an update where we are with that. The grant money for starting this plan has come in. And I guess any thoughts or wanting to change this as a goal? Yeah. I think this is one where
Keeper.
Yeah, we'll keep it. We can help. Admin will continue to take the lead. All right, back in 2022, diversity goal, continue looking into Juneteenth becoming a paid holiday for Tompkins County employees. We did that and it is, so success. And so it's not on 2023. Another 2022 goal, investigate the issue that racism is a public health crisis. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? It isn't, at least currently, on the proposed committee goals for 2023. It just in my mind, because while it's important, it's also pretty general, and I'm not sure what it exactly means as its own goal, but would love to hear thoughts.
I would need to go back and look at the Department of Whole Health and their goals for 2023, but I'm pretty certain that health equity issues are among them. I know that I've heard them being spoken of. So that may be different than racism as a public health crisis. However, I do know that in many of their efforts, they're trying to get at health equity issues and mental health parity as well.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think there are a number of directions which you could go with this. I mean, in terms of addressing the issue. I mean, especially given that, experts have talked about the social determinants of health, and racism is one of those factors among many others. So I think it's open broadly to interpretation as to how to address it, and I think that I think the opportunities certainly can present themselves to doing so. Certainly something that would be something perhaps down the road that our office would tackle itself, among others. So, we don't have an exclusive purchase on this.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Clark. So I think it's maybe a good thing to keep in mind, and maybe a small goal could be with check in with Whole Health and their goals and see what they're doing about equity, or if they're thinking about racism as a public health crisis and not necessarily something we need to design a research program about or anything, at least not this year.
I think it also speaks to the process that I hope we will embark upon with the strategic planning process, if we're centering equity in all of the goal, everything that we're doing, that it will show up as a foundation or as central to the considerations among the departments. So
that's a good point. So maybe this is just one of many relevant topics to not forget.
Yes.
In the goal about supporting the strategic plan designing. All right, 2022 goals. We had support the planning for the 2022 Juneteenth celebration, and in 2023 we have support the planning of the 2023 Juneteenth celebration, which I think sounds great. It sounds like, Dr. Clark, you and your office are set to lead this again, and we are here to support, and maybe this would be a good thing to check in about at our April meeting.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, we are trying to organize a meeting within the next couple of weeks to begin our planning.
Awesome, that sounds great. Any more comments on that? Next one on the 2022 goals was diversity training for board appointees. And this is on our proposed committee goals, basically explore diversity training for Tompkins County Advisory Board appointees, which I think is something that we, I already don't fully remember. We talked about, it's not something required or implemented. It does seem very this goal, if taken up, seems very related to that article we discussed last time. Does anyone have any thoughts, changes? Memories of what has and hasn't been done or desired?
We're talking diversity training for advisory committees.
For advisory board appointees is what it says. Because I think employees go through some kind of diversity training.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe at least a little. I remember doing it when in onboarding.
Yeah, it's something that we certainly want to do more of at various levels. So yeah, I don't know that I don't think it's a bad goal. I think that there's more that we can certainly do with our employees too. And I've also heard from members of the legislature that they would appreciate the training as well.
Yeah, I was going to suggest changing this to employees and elected officials. I think it could be something maybe down the road we could offer to advisory board appointees too, in addition. But I think at this point, I prefer, come top down, like the legislature. Be great if we had it, and then figuring out how to offer it on an ongoing basis versus just something at orientation.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe, yeah, let's expand this to also employees and elected officials. And the goal could be like figuring out, what could that look like? How could this be implemented to the different sets of people? And also, like folks have said before, what is what issue are we trying to address? Like, what is our specific goal? Yeah. Leslyn, did you have something?
I did. It's a laudable goal. I think you hit it on the head, Veronica, just in terms of how, excuse me, how, who's going to be doing it, all those logistics to be worked out. I actually like the advisory board appointees, appointed members to advisory boards, especially more of our pseudo governmental boards like the IDA or some of the others like that. That's what I mean. I think there is value in people getting this level of training, but it's the who's going to do it and how is it going to be worked out that happens is where my thinking is. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a lot of work we could do on that before even getting to the point that anybody is actually getting this hopefully helpful training. Other thoughts there? Okay, and I'm just noting we are slightly over time. It's 5:01. Are people okay to stay for like 5 more minutes to do the last couple?
Okay.
All right. Other than Lisa had to leave, but that's okay. Next 2022 proposed committee goal. 2022 committee goal was equality discussion groupings. I don't think we did anything on that, and I didn't move it over to the 2023 goals under the, and I would suggest still not doing that under the logic that having the reading and discussion program at all is like tenuous, though we're going to try. And this seems like it would be like a separate and stretch goal beyond that. Also something that someone would have to implement, run, and whatnot. But open to discussion or desire to add something about it to the 2023 goals. All right, thanks, Kit.
I mean, I wonder if this can just be implemented in JEDI.
You'd know better than I would.
I mean, and what I mean by that is that, right, that's already subcommittees that are volunteering their time to work on these topics. I know, I mean, I'm biased because it's my committee, but I know Access and Equity would be interested in, would be willing to support the work on this. And I believe others would as well.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. So maybe this is a thing to shift over to JEDI, at least for this year. All right, moving, I'm looking now at the 2023 proposed committee goals document, and we'll stick with that for the inclusion section. The two things on the 22 are still applicable and live here also. First one was begin planning for the workplace climate survey, explore adding more questions in depth to the DEIJ portion of the survey, and if being postponed again, ensure communication to employees to keep them updated. We already talked about that, so I'd suggest just leaving that. Next one was explore hosting and funding outside speakers for Heritage Month events. Heritage Month being like Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month, these sorts of things. Anyone have any thoughts or more specific intentions on this? I also want to flag this is the sort of thing also that I know Dr. Clark's Office of Human Rights already does a bunch of. So yeah, collaborating or coordinating would be important. Annie?
I would suggest a goal for this year is to develop a plan. And I would put that in front of those words, develop a plan to do that, because we don't always have a plan set up. And I would set it up in the previous year for the next year, so that we don't run into, okay, I'm doing wound up by default doing Women's History Month, and you and Rachel jumped in and did Black History Month. I mean, there was no plan ahead of time of who's going to do it, and you know, to be able to have a speaker, or you know, to have somebody come and accept the award if it's not to a specific person. I mean, I'm just thinking of the year before, and so that people know. And you could even assign for, you know, if we're having the same people on the committee, you know, people could always like say, hey, I'll take that one every year for the next couple of years maybe, and then they say if they can't. And so it's a little bit easier, you know, like Dr. Clark is, you know, does a lot of the activities for Juneteenth, helps coordinate that, and you know, every year, and I'm sure you get into a regular routine, and you know that's on your schedule for that particular, you know, celebration and activities.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's like add that into this. So making like a plan and a schedule of like, these are the Heritage Month things we want to acknowledge. Here's how we're going to, and like every meeting at this committee, we look at, okay, what is coming up in the next few months, and you know, like what are we going to do event-wise, proclamation-wise, and who is going to do it? And that's, you know, addressing like both these two goals kind of together, both about Heritage Months, the outside speakers, but also presenting proclamations and other announcements.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Any more on that? And the last one, because we already talked about accessibility, was review gendered language in internal and external county documents and support departments in replacing with gender neutral language where possible. And I think we had support departments because I don't think we can or necessarily should be like forcing people to change things. But it's something that seems to
them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something my department did last year. And I know that it was at the encouragement from Jackie, the former chair of Access and Equity with JEDI, and we've carried this on and really have continued talking about it as it's important, but definitely kind of desiring the guidance or information of, okay, how could we encourage other departments to do this? How could we take this to an even greater level with all county policies and written documentation?
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. That's awesome that your department is already like working more deeply on this.
Yeah. One suggestion I have is to just put in here so we don't forget, like, so in that one, review gendered language in internal and external county documents. And I would maybe put comma, including applications
Yes.
for employment and for advisory boards. So for instance, what's your preferred pronoun? What do you like to be called?
Mm-hmm.
Hits a possible recruitment piece as well.
And then, right, that will help with recruitment also, but it helps with the culture.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else on this? Actually, anything else on goals in general? Anything else you want to suggest?
One thing, it's for county buildings, and again, it might be easier to start with new ones, is to have at least a certain amount of gender neutral bathrooms. And we can't assume that a couple of years ago, we had a firm draw up plans for a proposed new county office building. And they only had men's and women's bathrooms throughout the building. And you might have heard the story before. But it really stuck with me. So they came back to the next meeting and they showed us, and I gave an example. I said, for instance, where are people that are transgender? Where are they going to go to? Where would they feel comfortable going to the bathroom? Well, they came back and they had one bathroom, something I think down on one floor, and it was called the transgender bathroom. And I was like, oh, okay, we some education here. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, good anecdote. That's, sounds like probably well-meaning, but not the ideal outcome.
Yeah, I don't know if that's policy that for new buildings, but we should make it a policy for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, good flag to. All right. Other thoughts on goals?
I think we're over time, so maybe
you're way over time. Yeah. If you think of something later, want to change it, you can email. I will. I'll try to send out a new, document with updated things, or maybe collaborate with Taylor on that later this week. Any other reports, updates, comments from anyone before we adjourn the meeting?
I just want to make sure everyone know they're invited tomorrow, Friday, the 24th at Ithaca College, 6:30 p.m. It's the Black History Month Community Showcase closes out Black History Month, so please do come if you can. 6:30 Ford Hall, Ithaca College on Friday.
What hall?
Ford.
Ford, okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslyn. Any other announcements, updates?
It will meet in 2 months, right?
Yes, we will meet in 2 months. We are now on our bi-monthly meeting schedule. So our next meeting will be April something or other, the 4th Wednesday in April at 3:30.
Yeah, we just didn't get to.
Right, so
Right.
Veronica, I just wanted to mention, we no longer have quorum, so the bylaws, I would suggest deferring.
Oh my, I am so sorry. I completely forgot about the bylaws. We should have moved those earlier. Well, yes, then I guess we will defer that to April, and maybe we can do them first in the April meeting.
Okay.
And one thing, I think it was with Veronica and I had talked about if we need to for that meeting, possibly trying to start it at 3 or something like that to make sure we have time to go through the bylaws. That's possible, if there's not another meeting.
Yeah,
I think that'll be fine. It's just today we had
HHS, right?
earlier, but that was rescheduled.
President's Day.
yes.
Okay, yeah,
So-
I would, maybe it's not a convo for now, but I'd forgotten it would, is it potentially possible to make WDIC a 2-hour meeting from 3 to 5, like always?
Since we're.
Maybe
only-
not. Because we're only meeting every other month.
Yes,
Yes. So maybe meet
Okay,
at 3.
cool.
Emails.
We should probably like check with all the members first, but
would you like me to do a doodle poll?
maybe not a doodle poll, but just can you email everyone and ask like, could you meet at 3 both specifically on the April date and also just for all the dates this year?
Yes,
Yeah, maybe just remind them of
Yep.
the rest of the meetings since it's
Yep.
every other month.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Taylor.
yep.
All right. Any last things? Yeah. Apologies for running over. Thank you all. Especially apologies to our staff, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Great meeting. What'd you think?
Yeah, I appreciate
Sorry, I
it.
forgot.